Hello, and in this first Mac/iOS Mac development tutorial, we're going to talk about how to hook into the Mac notification center. That's the notification center that you see on the side of your menu bar that you click and gives you a centralized area for notifications, and also where notifications pop up whenever an app wants to notify you about something. So that's what we're going to show you how to build today. This is my first development tutorial because I just started learning how to write apps for OS 10 and indeed for iOS. So this is going to be my first tutorial. Unlike most tutorials, I'm not going to do a sort of hello world tutorial. I might go back and do that in the future, but I wanted to show you how to build something actually useful that can use a native Mac, a pretty recent Mac API. This has only been around since Mountain Lion, and so you can see how to actually build something. I'm going to try and explain as much of it as I can, but like I said, I don't want to really focus on the absolute basics of how it works, because the point of this video is to show you how easy it is to build something that dips into kind of high-level new modern functionality. So that's what the aim of this video is going to be. I kind of realised during this that it's kind of difficult to mix a beginner's tutorial with some kind of advanced useful stuff, but that's what we're going to hope to do. And then in later videos, as I learn more, I'll do more advanced stuff, and then I'll go back and kind of fill in the gaps with the easier stuff as I go along. So that's the idea of this video. Let's dive in and see how we do it. I've tried to do this video before, and I've decided it was either too complicated or too simple. So I'm going to put something out there now, and hopefully it helps some people. We're going to use Apple's the most recent version of Apple's programming language. Mac apps used to be written in a language called Objective-C, which was a pain to write, but now written in something called Swift, which is Apple's programming language. And don't worry, one thing that I agonised over was, do I learn Objective-C or do I learn Swift? I should actually know a bit of Objective-C as well, which I think is good, but I've focused on learning Swift because all the Objective-C APIs can be automatically used in Swift. So even though a lot of the Mac kind of layer was developed in Objective-C, all those APIs are accessible to Swift. So if you're a new developer, if you don't need to work on Teams, my view is you might as well start in Swift, which is what I'm doing, because Swift is a lot easier. So with that said, we're going to open Xcode. That's the Mac development platform where you need to develop all Mac or iOS apps. It can be downloaded for free from the App Store. So assuming you've done that, I'm just going to pop open Xcode. And I'm going to say start a new Xcode project. And I'm going to then get this window here, obviously, and it's going to by default be set on iOS, and I could build an iOS app with a lot of the same code, but some of it is different. So in this case, we're going to be building a macOS app, and I just want the simplest app where I'm going to say Cocoa app. What you usually do in an advanced programming language when you develop a GUI app is you have the core of the programming language, but then you have frameworks on top of it that define how the UI works and how you hook into various aspects of that UI. That's one of the easiest hardest things I found to learn when I was learning low-level programming languages is, okay, how do I get from all this simple stuff to actually handling events and dealing with UI? And you need what's called a framework for that. And the Mac one is called Cocoa, so we're going to say build a Cocoa app. And I'm just going to call mine notification demo. Now this, the organisation name isn't that important, but the organisation identifier is actually really important. You won't have one by default, but you notice if I get rid of one, it doesn't even let me create the application. The next button is grayed out, so you need to put something in here. So to notify it uniquely on that app store. So I'm just going to say Tom Rogers. By default, it says language is going to be Swift, and it's going to give us the latest version of Swift. And notice it says your primary implementation language, because if you're writing Swift, you can and will be using Objective-C as well. You'll just be using it in a nice modern Swift wrapper. We don't want to use a document application at the moment, and we don't want to use storyboards either. By default, in the newer versions of Xcode, this will actually be checked, but we're not going to use them for now. In iOS, you actually have to use them, but we're just going to use standard interface files for now. That doesn't change your code; it just changes how you write the interface. So with all that set, we're going to hit next and choose somewhere to store our project. I've got a Mac apps folder, so I'm just going to create. And with all that done, we're going to go over to our main menu.xib, which confusingly isn't just our menu, it's actually our whole application. So I've gone over and clicked on that, and by default all we see is our menu. So you might think, oh well, that's all we get. It's called main menu, so it must control our menu, but it actually creates a window for us by default. Otherwise we'd have to create it ourselves. So to display that, all we're just going to do is go over to this window icon and click on it, and we've now got a window. So unlike lots of other languages like C++, if you're used to developing on Windows, where you would have to write a load of code to add in all your UI, on the macOS you do it all by drag and drop. So we're just going to drag on a push button here and just place it in the upper part of the window, and I'm just going to give it a label here. We're just editing the text of the button here. We're not actually editing the identifier of the button, but we just want to edit the label, and I'm just going to say send message. Now, why am I attaching all my functionality to this button? Why would you want a app that just you press the button and it sends you a notification? Well, I'm only doing that because that's the simplest possible way to or the simplest possible way to demonstrate triggering a notification. There are other tutorials on YouTube that show you how to set a timer to trigger this notification, which may be a little more realistic, because you wouldn't press the button and have it immediately trigger a notification, but it then gets you trapped in kind of all the logic of the timer rather than actually kind of understanding the notification workflow. So with all that done, that's going to be our entire interface. But how do we make our button work? Well, unlike in other languages, we drag and drop to do that too, at least the initial part of it. So now we need to explain a more complex concept that I can't really get away from. This app delegate class is Swift is an object-oriented programming language, which means we focus on objects, not the procedures we want to do, but the objects want to do them too. And each of the different procedures basically belongs to object. By default, you get an app delegate class, which is a derivative of NS object, and it's also the NS application developer delegate. NS meaning next step, the kind of name of Steve Jobs' old operating system, and so that's where that came from. And this app delegate class can do loads and loads of stuff. We're actually going to use delegation in some ways in this tutorial, but yeah, this for now is where we're going to write all our code. In more complex applications, you would want to separate your behaviour into different classes. That's why we have them, but in this case we're just going to use the one that we're provided for us. So in the most simple way, how do we handle it when we receive a click on that button? Well, what we want to do is go to our back where we created our UI and hit this button up here, which will show the code that's kind of relevant to that particular UI. So we're just going to hit that button there that says show the assistant editor, and we're going to and drag from our button to the top before the first function. The top part is properties and the bottom part is functions, and this is something we want to we want the button to perform a function, so we actually want that underneath all our other functions, and that's good practice to put it underneath what's already been created for you. So under there, I'm just going to say function. It tells us what object it's in. I've already discussed it's in our app delegate class, and by default it says an outlet, but we don't want it to display anything. We want it to produce an action, so we're just going to change this to action. Now, unlike what you might expect, this name thing isn't the name of the object per se. It's the name of the function or piece of code that's going to be triggered, or the method, we should more properly call it, that's going to be triggered when this button is clicked. So we want to call it something to do with an action. So I'm going to say btn pressed, and down here where it says type, we're gonna now it says any, but we want it to be defined as the type it actually is, and this is called an NS button, or if you're familiar with other programming languages, it's an instance of the class NS button. So to be able to do all the things we want to do with it, we to be able to accept clicks, we don't want to just leave it as any. We want to set it to what it should be, which is an NS button, and hit connect. It's then going to create a relationship between that button and our code, and inside this code, or inside our method as we should call it, we should be able to write all the code that should happen when we create a button. So what do we want to do? Well, we want to send our notification. So how do we do that? Well, we first want to create our notification. So how would we do that? Well, if you're familiar with JavaScript, you might be familiar with the concept of variables, and that's where we store stuff. So if we said we want to create a var, which is our notification. That might be fine, but we in Swift we have two kind of storage constructs, var and let. Var is more computationally intensive, but it's for things that are mutable or might be changed, and let is for things that are constant. And once we've created our notification, that one notification is going to be constant, so we're going to say let instead. And what type of object is it going to be? Well, it's going to be an instance of we want to pull out the Apple's default class for what happens when you create a notification, so we can use that format. So what is that? Well, it's called NS user notification. And what do we want to do with that object that we've got? Well, we want to init or initialize a new instance of it, because we want to create a new notification. And so now we're going to set what we want to do with that notification. Well, I want to set its title. So now that I've got the object, I'm just going to say notif, and which is my custom object, and one property I want to set on it is the title. So I'm just going to say notif.title equals example title. If we're in Objective-C, we'd need @ signs and all sorts of stuff here, but we can just, because we're in Swift, we can just write the string as a normal string. I'm going to set a few more things here. So, my object dot subtitle equals demo, and my actual just regular notification text is going to be I'm going to get that by setting notif dot informative text to whatever I want, and in this case I'm just going to say text. Now, if you haven't really done much programming before, you might think that when we've written that, we're home and dry because we've just created a notification. So if we click run, we might think, oh, why shouldn't that just work? But if we run it says it's succeeded in building. But if we wait for it to pop open the application and we hit send message, we'll see that nothing happens. Well, why not? It's because we've not done a number of things here. This was confusing to me when I first started. Well, one of the things we need to do first is create a notification center. Well, what is that? I thought this whole thing was a notification center. Well, we need to create a notification center for our app to store our own notifications internally. So, what do we do for that? Well, we wanna let our own we wanna let another item, and I'm using let because we're not, once we've got a reference to this, we're not going to change it. So I'm just going to call it my center. And what's that going to be equal to? Well, that instead of an NS notification, that's going to be equal to an NS user notification center. And what are we going to do to that? Well, we can't use init really. Well, we could do, and some people argue you should do, but every app gets a default notification center, so why don't we just use the default? Well, that's what we're going to do in this case. So we've now got a reference to notification center where we want our notifications to be sent. And so we can now say that our notification is going to be, we can say once we created our notification that our notification center should deliver our notification. Well, what's our notification? Well, it's that notif object that we just created. And we might think this is going to work. We're not seeing any errors, but actually that's not going to work either. There are more, there's something else we need to do, and these are higher level language features that are going to be difficult to explain, but basically we need to set something called a delegate. Well, what is a delegate? Well, because this is our own object that we've created here, and NS Notification Center is a higher level system API. Okay, for anyone who knows code development, this is going to be inaccurate, but really what we're saying here is we can't get access to all those API events by default. We have to let the computer accept those events and delegate them down to us. Well, if we're going to be a delegate for that object, we have to be ready to accept those certain methods that are, and they're just going to be given to us by being the delegate. So how do we set ourselves as a delegate? Well, we say we're going to implement a protocol. You can see the app delegate class is already given to you, is already our NS application delegate. So to say we're a delegate for something else, we can just put a comma here and say we're an NS user notification center delegate. This is saying we're ready to accept any of those methods. Now this code now would work if we were allowing this notification to be triggered like you normally would when something happened when a user wasn't interacting with the application. But because we're in a special case, because we're gonna have just clicked on something, and the app's already gonna be active, normally we wouldn't want to see a notification, which is why most of these little tutorials show you based on a timer or something. But if we want to see the notification that's being sent for demonstration purposes, there's a function that we can attach to, but we don't have to write it ourselves. It's given to us because we're the delegate for the NS Notification Center. So what is that? Well, if you start typing, it'll give it for you, and it includes the words present notification. So I'm just going to start typing present, and as I can see right at the top there, that's an NS Notification Center. So I know that's the right one. So I'm just going to press return, and it says put your code in here. So should we present notifications? And basically this says it wants me to return or give the function back a Boolean value. And what does a Boolean mean? Well, it means yes or no. So in this case, it means this code here basically won't really get executed. It just wants a yes or no answer. Do we want it to return notifications even if the app's not active? Well, our answer is yes, we do. So I'm just going to say return true, and with any luck, if I run that, we should see that when we press send message, nothing happens. What have we done wrong? Well, I'd forgotten about this actually. This, where we define ourselves as a delegate up here, this is just saying we can be the delegate, but we could be the delegate for lots of things. So how do we tell our new notification center that we've only just created here, because remember we had to create a notification center specifically for our app. It doesn't, even though we can be the delegate, it doesn't automatically know we are the delegate. So how does it know we are the delegate? Well, we need to tell it that we need to do what's called set a property. So we're just going to say this notification center that we've already created, its delegate property equals self, which is the class that we're in. And what class are we in? Well, it's up here, the app delegate class. And what is the app delegate class defined on? Well, it's the NS user notification center delegate. So this will be able to accept this. Hopefully second time lucky if we run that. We should see that if I click send message, this notification center appears, which is what we defined in our app. Now that seems like a really simple, pointless bit of functionality, but what we've done is hooked into some really quite advanced modern APIs in Objective-C. In this one tutorial we've seen handling events, we've seen setting properties, setting delegates, writing methods, a whole ton of different stuff, objects. So hope this has whetted your appetite for kind of Apple development and shown you that it's not as difficult as it might seem. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.